What's up, card fighters? Today I'm doing a special deck profile today. It is Rorowa Premium. This is the deck that I took to teams for Rosemont, Illinois, and I did very well with it going 4-1. Let's hop into it. So for my grade zeros, I run 1 Stoicheia Overtrigger, 8 crits, 3 draw PGs, and a V starter. Stoicheia Overtrigger gives you additional crit, 10k through the front row, you draw an additional card, and you get to kill 1. Very good utility all around. Then you got the crits that go into soul, plus 10k and draw a card. And then the stride powder crits, which are very important to help you consistently stride. Other than that, that's it for the grade zeros. Let's hop over to the grade ones. For my grade ones, I am running 2 Burrow Mushroom Man, 3 Brilliant Blister, 4 Little Dorcas, 3 High Class Moth, 2 Spiritual Body Condensations, and 1 Sanctitude. For Mushroom Man, on Rearguard Circle, move to Soul, spawn 2 plant tokens. Very simple, gives me 2 free Rearguards, and gives me Soul. Brilliant Blister is a fantastic hand trap and rearguard. When it's placed on Guardian Circle, if your opponent's Vanguard is at rest, Soul Blast 1, discard a card, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and rest it, and it cannot stand for the rest of that turn. Then back row Rearguard Circle. If your opponent has no standing rearguards, return him to your hand. If you have 6 or less cards in your hand, Soul Blast 1 to draw a card. It's very good to help push for early games by boosting the tokens for 13, boosting 10k grade 2s for 18, and then at the end of your turn you bounce it back. So you apply pressure and you get hand advantage off of it. Little Dorcas is just on place Vanguard Rearguard, check top 5, add a grade 3 from hand and discard 1. And then he gets 5k power if all your opponent's units are at rest. And so he's a 13k attacker or booster. Then you have High Class Moth, where you rest it, bottom deck a normal unit, countercharge 1, choose one of your opponent's rearguards, and it cannot intercept. And it counts as a grade 3 in deck and in soul. Spiritual Body Condensation, Soul Blast 1, call any unit card from your drop zone that is equal to or less grade than your Vanguard and gets 5k power. It helps keep aggression with the deck, but you can also use it to Soul Blast out Mushroom Man, call it back, then put Mushroom Man back into the soul and get yourself 2 more tokens if you need to fill up your back row with boosters and all that. With Sanctitude, it's just a free PG if your opponent is on stride because they'll always have the triple drive icon. Other than that, that's really it for the grade 1s. Let's hop on over to the grade 2s. For my grade 2s, I am running 4 Candelarias, 3 Tideline Dragons, and 3 Sweet Cocktails. Candelaria, she's great for offense because she's a 10k, so she helps hit 10k body Vanguards. And then at the end of the turn, she'll die to get you 2 free tokens on the board, which can help set you up for your following turn if you don't have boosters to call from your hand. Tideline Dragon, when you Persona Ride, you could Soul Blast 1 and give him and another unit of your choice 10k power. The Tideline helps push the deck farther in power thresholds because of that, because you are always trying to Persona Ride with Rorowa every turn possible until you can't anymore. Sweet Cocktail is a fantastic promo that we recently got. On Vanguard Circle, when you ride on top of her, you create one of your opponent's rearguards, which is really good because if they try to aggro you, you can lock out one of their important rearguards that they need. Her second skill is where it's really at. On Rearguard or Guardian Circle, when it attacks a grade 2 or greater Vanguard, Soul Blast 1, your opponent chooses to retire a standing rearguard. If they do not, 5k to your front row and draw a card. So when you're on the offense, most of the time they're going to have rested rearguard, so it's just a free 5k to your front row and draw a card. Since this skill can also be used on Guardian Circle, it can interrupt your opponent's play by forcing them to retire a rearguard, and if they refuse to, you get 5k to your front row permanently. Your Vanguard will be an extra 5k, which makes her a 10k block. Also, with Tideline, if you Persona Ride, you can just use Mushroom Man skill to go into Soul, spawn you 2 free tokens, and then Soul Blast the Mushroom Man out for just free advantage. Other than that, that's it for the grade 2. Now on to the grade 3s. For my grade 3 lineups, I am running 4 Rorowas, 2 Full-Blown Dragons, 2 Machining Stag Beetles, and 4 Heal Guardians. So for those of you who don't know, Rorowa's skills are Act, Vanguard Circle, Soul Blast 1, and spawn 3 plant tokens. They are 5k base. Then his second skill is, when he is being attacked, you can retire 1 or more plant tokens and give him 5,000 power for each token retired until the end of that battle. which is very helpful to preserve your hand. But please remember, with Rorowa, you must do his skill before you guard from hand, because it's when he is being attacked. You cannot guard from hand and then do Rorowa's skill. With Full-Blown Dragon, at the end of your turn, if you have a Glitter Vanguard, which Rorowa also has Glitter, move him into Soul and spawn 2 tokens. Helps you build up your Soul for a Sweet Cocktail or Brilliant Blister, Ghidorah or your G-Guard, and gives you 2 tokens on the defensive turn. So if you open up Rorowa and Full-Blown Dragon, at the end of your first grade 3 turn, you can have 5 tokens on board, which is a free 25k shield value. Stag Beetle, when he's placed on Vanguard or Rearguard from hand, you can call up to 2 cards from your Soul at rest. If he's placed on Vanguard Circle, he gets the combined power of those units. So what makes Stag Beetle really unique is that, since he can call any unit, when you go into your stride turns, you can call him and call, say, Mushroom Man from Soul and Full-Blown Dragon. Then you can use Mushroom Man to go into Soul and spawn your 2 free tokens, and you're not losing on your Soul. And then at the end of your turn, when you call Full-Blown Dragon out of your Soul with Stag Beetle, if you're on a stride, what happens is you unstride first, then the end of turn effect of Full-Blown Dragon will activate, and you will now have a Vanguard with Glitter. You can put Full-Blown Dragon into Soul and spawn you 2 tokens. And then you can call over the Stag Beetle with the token, so you get free tokens on board for just 1 card in your hand, and you don't lose any Soul at all. And then you have the Heal Guardians, which are heal triggers, and if you haven't rolled a grade 3 at all this fight, it can give your Vanguard 10k power until end of turn, or minus your opponent by 2 crit when placed on the Guardian Circle. If they damage deny you, and you have no cards in your damage zone, you can call this card to Rearguard Circle and put 1 card to your damage. So this deck really doesn't care if you get damage denied, because the whole entire deck is all Counterblast list. Not a single card in my main deck takes a Counterblast. So if they damage deny you, and you have the Heal Guardian in your hand, you can just call it and give yourself the 1 damage. The rest of the deck is perfectly fine without damage. But other than that, let's go over to the strides. So for my G-Zone, I am running 4 Ghidorahs, 3 Malajantas, 3 Overwhelms, 1 Cyclone, 1 Grisefort, 1 Featherwall, 2 Cruelable, and 1 Relish Lady. Ghidorah does Ghidorah things. Counterblast 1, flip a card in your G-Zone face up. Stun your opponent's stand phase. They cannot call cards from anywhere except their hand, and they cannot G-Guard. Then when Ghidorah attacks, Soul Blast 1, call a grade 3 out of your deck, and it gets 10k power. Malajantas, Vanguard, and G-Zone. On Vanguard Circle, it is free. So flip a card in G-Zone face up, minus your opponent's Vanguard by 10. If they have a standing Rearguard, you kill that first, countercharge 1, and draw a card. In the G-Zone, it takes a Counterblast and you eat a Rearguard into Soul. For Overwhelm, Counterblast 1, flip any card in your G-Zone face up, draw X amount of cards to the number of your opponent's rested Rearguards. If they have 1 or less Rearguards at rest, she goes critical +1 and drive +1. At GB3 Dark Device, all of your units get 2,000 power for every face-down card in their damage zone. Helps really, really well for aggressive play and building your hand back up, because if they have all 5 cards face down, it's plus 10k to your units, which makes 20k columns, and then if you Persona Ride, it's an extra 10k on top of that. Cyclone is Cyclone, and you never stride Cyclone, you just flip it up to give your tokens an extra 5k, so they're always bigger boosters. Grisefort. During the battle, your opponent's Vanguard attacks your Vanguard, Counterblast 1, and rest all your opponent's Rearguards in the back row, and she gets 5,000 power for every 2 units at rest. So helps interrupt big boosters, and then could be potentially a pretty big shield. Featherwall. If your opponent has 2 or less units in stand, she gets 10k shield, so easy 25k block when used correctly. Soul Blast 1 gets 30k shield. Your opponent can rest any number of Rearguards to decrease its shield value by 10, which is really good because it helps interrupt their plays depending on the situation. Relish Lady's effect is when placed on Guardian Circle, flip a G-Guard face up. During the battle, your opponent's Vanguard attacked your Vanguard. You may pay the cost. If you do, your opponent chooses 2 Rearguards and rest them. If they are unable to rest, you get to draw Soul Charge and Countercharge. So it helps fill your soul up for a blister, a cocktail, lets you able to draw it into anything, even another Rorowa for Persona Ride, and it gives you a countercharge back. So pretty helpful utility. Other than that, that's really for the strides. Now let's see if I can demonstrate some other plays that I usually do with the deck. So let's say you're going first, and you're sitting on a Sweet Cocktail. You can ride Rorowa, cradle a Rearguard, then you Soul Blast 1, and spawn you 3 tokens. Usually what I try and do is I try and call a blister and the full-blown dragon. So this way, if I know I'm short on hand, I know I could get the blister to proc. You go swing for 13, swing for 18, twin drive. No triggers. Then swing for 18 again. Then you go to your end turn. Since blister and full-blown dragon proc at the same time, you can bounce blister first, soul blast 1, draw a card, then full-blown can go into soul and spawn you 2 free tokens. So that way, you break even on the blister, returning yourself to hand to drawing your card, and you replace your board. With the 2 tokens, now you have your 25k shield, and you're sitting with a blister in hand that your opponent is aware of, but it makes them have to plan their turn out a little bit differently, knowing you have the blister. I have 0 damage, because let's say they damage deny me because they don't want me to Rorowa them, which is fine. I mean, again, you got 25k shield on board, you have a blister in your hand, and potentially 7 cards in your hand. So let's say you're going to Stride, and again, we're just going to use Sweet Cocktail as an example of being on the Vanguard Circle. So you're going to ride, cradle, stride. I built this deck to specifically be overwhelm for stride. Reason why is because if they aggressively attack you, you can draw up to 5 and dig into your token generators and all that. So let's just say they just punched with the Vanguard and they kept me on 1 damage. So counterblast 1, flip over Cyclone and draw a card. So now you're critical with drive +1. And you can go ahead and call Sweet Cocktail, full-blown dragon, call Little Dorcas, do its skill, attempt to find a grade 3. If you grab Rorowa, you grab Rorowa. If you don't, you don't. But you can call Mushroom Man, move Mushroom Man into soul, and spawn you 2 free tokens. Now you have a 23k attacker for full-blown dragon and a 19k attacker for a Sweet Cocktail. So usually what I do is attack with Sweet Cocktail, Soul Blast 1, potentially +5, draw a card. Then swing with Overwhelm, do the quad checks. Pass everything to the dragon. Dragon attacks. Then, end of turn, you will destride. Then full-blown dragon will run into soul, because again, you unstride first before your end turn. So that way you can spawn yourself 2 free tokens. And now you have 20k shield worth of tokens and a Sweet Cocktail ready to intercept and soul blast out anything in your soul to assist with defense value. Now obviously you could get more advantage on the draw off of Overwhelm. Now let's say you take some damage. You go to 3. You intercept with Sweet Cocktail, and you sack 2 of your tokens away to go to 23, to hold off a 22k poke or something like that. So you draw for turn. Persona Ride Rorowa to draw an additional card. In this case, I drew the critical trigger, so stride. Now, you go to Rorowa. Rorowa skill to flip over a Mally. Now, you can call Tideline Dragon, and using Spiritual Body Condensation, Soul Blast 1, bring out Sweet Cocktail. With Tideline Dragon skill, Soul Blast 1, both Sweet Cocktail and Tideline Dragon get an additional 10k. So now they are plus 20. Actually, Sweet Cocktail is plus 25 because of the condensation. So what you do is swing with this. So you swing for 30. Tap with Rorowa next. Superior Call Full-Blown Dragon. Full-Blown Dragon gets 10k power, which puts him back to 33. Because he's also on the Persona Ride turn. Triple Drive. No triggers. Oh, there's Rorowa for the next Persona Ride turn. Then you can swing with Sweet Cocktail, do her skill. Soul Blast 1. 5k to your front row if they have no standing units. Draw an additional card. Then swing with Full-Blown Dragon for 23, 33, 43, 48 at the end of your turn, just like with the Overwhelm, into Soul, and spawning 2 tokens. Now, I could have also used Malajantis to minus by 10k, but I didn't. I actually forgot about it. So this is also one of those situations where if you had no tokens on the board, you can call a Stag Beetle to call out the Full-Blown Dragon to behind the Vanguard Circle, do your turn that way, then have Dragon run to Soul to spawn you 2 free tokens to help you keep defense pressure on. That's pretty much how I built the deck. Be as aggressive as possible and fall back on all the end turn phases of Full-Blown Dragon, Chandelera, to get tokens to preserve hand advantage. If the deck goes off right, you can have a big hand while relying on your board and tokens through a Rorowa skill to keep a good hand size. Other than that, that's really it for the deck. This is what I have been working on since Rorowa first dropped. I am in love with this deck. It is very consistent, and I cannot wait to upgrade this deck with the new cards from History Collection, Festival Collection, and anything from future sets going forward. I hope you enjoyed the deck profile. I'm very proud with how this deck ran going 4-1. Also, I would like to thank some of my friends that have helped me test this. Commander Jaime, John, Shiga, Intex, my buddy Brock, and anybody else that I could think of that I tested with and have showed this deck off that I am forgetting. I am sorry. But thank you so much for all the testing. You guys really helped me improve this deck throughout the months that I've been testing this. And I could not have got this far without you guys. Thank you so much for being so patient with me at this deck. Until next time, card fighters, be safe out there.